Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to our fourth session of From Solopreneur to Soulpreneur. And this is what I'm calling the half-hour MBA. Now, I want to be really clear, I don't have an MBA. But in the next half hour or so, I want to share with you the things that I have seen covered by MBA programs, by talking to people who've done MBA programs and reading textbooks from MBA programs, and that have actually been genuinely helpful to see in my own business. And I share them not because they're the right answers, but because my experience is this is a missing piece for a lot of soulpreneurs. Most entrepreneurs, they kind of have figured out the business side of business. Most solopreneurs and soulpreneurs don't really think of it as a business. They think of it as a calling or as a way out of their job or something they don't like. And so they haven't necessarily learned the basics of how a business works. And without question, the thing that's made the biggest difference in my business I've been doing this for over 30 years now, was when somebody pointed out to me that I am not my business. Now, that may either sound really obvious to you because, well, no, you're you and your business is your business. Or it may be confusing because it's like, well, no, I am my business. I mean, without me, there is no business. But I want you to consider treating your business like a separate entity to you, really drawing clean lines between you and your business. And in this, sort of in the last session, we were really looking at you, not your business. In this session, we're going to really look at your business, not you. So I want to begin with one of the most interesting conversations I ever witnessed. And it was between my son, Oliver, and a man named Bob Hurley. Now, many of you will have heard of Hurley Clothes. It's a sort of a line of leisure clothing and surf wear and beach wear and athletic wear that's, at least at the time of this recording, is now owned by Nike. It was sold by Bob to Nike for hundreds of millions of dollars in true entrepreneurial style. And Oliver I think he was in his early 20s, and I was speaking at a TEDx event in Bend, Oregon. And if you've not seen it, my TEDx talk, Why Aren't We Awesomer, was recorded there. And Bob was also giving a talk at the same thing, and he'd also come with his son. So we connected, and he invited Oliver and I to dinner, which was incredibly kind. And Oliver, being a young, budding entrepreneur or he is actually more entrepreneur than soulpreneur, but he was really interested in what he could learn from Bob. So he said to him, can I ask you a question? Bob said, sure. And he said, what's the secret of your success? And it was fascinating because Bob kind of hemmed and hawed a bit, and he said, I don't know, kid, I'm like Mr. Magoo. I just kind of do stuff and it sort of works, which, by the way, is following your soul path. But he then went on to say something that I think is at the heart of understanding what it takes to be truly successful at the business side of your business. He said, I've always loved surfing and surfers and surfboards and so I've always wanted to work in that world. And so I started out just thinking I can probably improve on surfboards. And so that was the first thing I learned was how surfboards are made. And I, studied with and worked with, one of the great surfboard makers. Then I learned to make my own surfboards and I began selling those to people. And then it occurred to me one day, well, what else do they need? Well, they need board shorts and they need, other items. And eventually out of his love and care for the world he was working in, he got really good at what he did. And so one half of the secret of success, and to be honest, I actually think it's more like 80% of success, is being really good at what you do. And being really good at what you do comes from loving and caring for what you do in the community you serve. Now, as a soulpreneur, you're gonna love and care for the community. So if you stick with it, you will get really good. And we're gonna talk more about that in the third section of the program on creating long-term sustainable success. But the other thing he said, which was almost an offhand comment, was, oh, and I'm pretty good at math. And we laughed, but in retrospect, I thought, yeah, that's a lot of it. Now, if you're not good at math or you don't think of yourself as good at math, let me tell you a story about, me. So I actually always have been good at math. I got a perfect score on my math SAT. But somehow, when it wasn't math, it was money, I was an idiot. Like, I remember sitting with my business manager once, a long time ago, and she was showing me the spreadsheets for the income and the expenses and the profit and loss for the business. And I burst into tears. And she said to me, no, Michael, it's really good. You're making a profit. And I said, I can't read it. And I literally experienced what my friends with dyslexia describe, how the letters kind of move around and they can't read it. And looking back on it, I realized that what I was experiencing was just my own fear, my own stress, this pressure to understand this thing I didn't understand. And so I was like the person trying to get good at pinning the tail on the donkey after spinning themselves around dizzy and closing their eyes because they don't want to look. Now, as I saw that, I was able to relax. I was able to let it take a little bit of time. And that is my invitation to you. We're going to talk about unfucking your relationship with money in the next section. But for now, I want you to just, as best you can, just listen, follow along. You can come back to this as often as you like. You don't have to figure it all out in one go. But see what you can see. Because what I'm going to share with you are, to my mind, the most important things for you to know to successfully get started or take your soulpreneurial business to the next level. Now, there are essentially 3 numbers that it's really important that you've got a handle on in your business. And the first number is the number that most people like, unless they don't like what it is, but it's the income. You gotta know how much money is coming in. Now, it's your business's income, not your income. That's the thing when you start to realize, oh, I'm not my business, which means my business's income is not my income. That's a very helpful thing to realize. The second number is your business's expenses. What is your business spending money on to stay in business? And one of your business's biggest expenses probably will be you. So you are not the income of your business. You are not your business. You are an expense for your business. And since part of the reason you're in business is because you want your business to support your life and your lifestyle, you're a very valuable expense. You're an important expense. And then the third number is profit. And the way you figure out profit is income minus expense equals profit. Now, profit's an interesting number for soulpreneurs. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're running businesses to grow them, to sell them, well, then profit is how you show that your company is worth investing in or buying. But for a soulpreneur, where you're not going to sell your business, you are, in that sense, your business exists because you want to do it, you want to express, you want to impact, and you want the income. Then for you, profit is going to do 2 things. It's going to give you the money to invest in your business so that you can grow it further, so that you can increase your income, so that you can increase your expenses, including the expense called you, and that will leave you with even more profit. But it's also essential for what I have seen over the years to be the most important thing the most important number to pay attention to in your business, which is cash flow. When it comes to running your own business, cash flow is king, not income. If you heard that one business made $100,000 and another business only made $20,000, which business would you think was doing better? Well, chances are the one that made $100,000. But what if, in order to make that $100,000, that business piled up $110,000 in expenses? And what if the business that only made $20,000 only had $10,000 in expenses? Then that would be the more profitable business. That would be the business that could grow over time. Because if you're losing money year on year, it gets harder and harder and harder to get things going. If you're making money, not income, but profit year on year on year, it gets easier and easier to run your business. Here's another difference between cash flow and income. Cash flow covers you in real time. Income is just sort of like a number that you add up at the end of the year. So let's stick with our $100,000 number. If I make $100,000 in my business in income this year, but it all comes in November, how did I stay in business from January? Now, unless I had money of my own, and I didn't take any money out of the business, I probably really struggled. It was probably really difficult. I may have had to borrow money. I may have had to do a bunch of things that were not part of my obvious soul path and that I didn't really want to do just to stay in business. But if I put my attention on cash flow, then I start to see that making $10,000 a month is probably worth more to me than making, okay, that would add up to $120,000. So then making $150,000, but all in one go. So cash flow is the lifeblood of your business. It is oxygen to your business. Without it, your business will die. Very important point. Your business needs cash flow. You do not. When you feel like you need money to breathe, that's a misunderstanding of money. And we'll talk about that in the Unfucking Your Relationship with Money session. But your business does need money to live. And so the more you pay attention to cash flow as the primary number, the better and easier you'll find the journey. Now, let me give you an example of how these numbers all work in the industry I'm most familiar with, which is the coaching industry, which is an industry I've been in since the early 1990s. And one of the things that's happened, this wasn't true when I started, but somewhere along the way, the goal of every new coach became to have a six-figure coaching business. And I don't actually know where that originated, but it's almost funny when I meet a coach and I ask them what their goals are. A six-figure coaching business always comes up. But what I've always wondered and what I'm always curious about is, what do you mean by that? Do you mean that your business has an income of $100,000 or more? Which, like we saw earlier, might not be very good at all if it cost you $120,000 to make it. Does it mean that you take away $100,000? And that's your net, that's what you keep after taxes. In which case, well, your business needs to make a lot more money than that, because it's got to pay you, let's say $150,000 to $200,000 to include your taxes, and then it's got to spend whatever else it has to spend in order to stay in business to make that money. So to be a six-figure coach in that sense might take $250,000 a year or more in income for the business. Now, the truth, in my experience, for most new coaches or people who are starting out, is it's actually none of that. It's not actually about the money, it's about the self-image. It's about being able to say, I am a six-figure coach. I have a six-figure business. And I don't know when that became cool, but it's it's a meaningless goal. It's an ego goal. It's something that here's my measure for the difference between an ego goal and a soul project. An ego goal is something that I may or may not want, but I really love telling people that I'm doing it or that I've done it. A soul project is just something I really want to do, regardless of whether anyone else ever knows about it or not. And so one of the ways that I see people who are new at business or who've been in business for a while for themselves but are struggling is, are they chasing real numbers? Are they working towards actual profit that includes the expense of themselves? Or are they chasing a lifestyle or an image or an idea? It's like as a writer, I meet a lot of people who want to be writers. And some of them actually want to be writers, which means they want to write. But a surprising number just want to be able to call themselves writers because they like the idea of it and they like the image of it. Funnily enough, the writers who want to write do a lot better over time than the writers who want to be able to call themselves writers. So it's really helpful, like I said, to be able to distinguish between you and your business. And as you do, you'll start to see a different way of setting your targets financially for your business. The most helpful way that I've found to set up your business financial goals is, what is the smallest amount of money that I need from the business in order for it to be worth my while to continue to run it. Now, I say the smallest number because so many people want these big numbers that sound impressive, like our 6-figure business that we talked about, when in fact, they could do just fine if they took home $30,000 or even a little bit less or a little bit more. And so they make it incredibly hard on themselves, completely unnecessarily. Now, it doesn't mean you can't make more, but it's really helpful to know your bottom line number. And the way that you get there is you look at your lifestyle and you look at, well, given whatever else I'm doing, how much money do I need to live my life? Not my ultimate dream life, but my life as I will enjoy it. Not like a completely tiny, shrinky life, not a huge, amazing, abundant life, just a nice life. That's your starting number. And then you start to do some math. You start to look at, well, okay, for me to be able to have this much, I need to add in tax. So I need to find out, well, okay, if let's say it is $30,000 that I could get, I could do okay on $30,000. Well, okay, then I'm going to need to probably make $45,000 to $50,000 in order to keep 30. Okay, then what are the expenses of my business? What does it cost? What's the cost of doing business? And you might not know that when you start, but you can get a rough idea, and then as you go, you'll be able to fill in real numbers, and that will make your projections more and more accurate as you go. And let's say that you work out the numbers and you realize, okay, for me to take home $30,000 that I get to keep and use for myself, the business needs to bring in $75,000. Okay, you now have your first real business income target. Here's the thing. If you're just starting out, you might not be able to make $75,000 in your first year. In fact, in a lot of businesses, it's pretty unlikely, and in some businesses, it's easier. Now, does that mean, well, there's no point in going into business then? Well, if you want it to, but what it really means is you might need to find other sources of income until you can get your business to the level where it can consistently make $75,000 or more. And just by taking the time to do some really simple, basic math, you can take so much of the ego pressure, of the mind pressure off yourself, and just take a realistic look at the numbers, and you'll know, yeah, this is something I'm pretty sure that I can do directly through the business, or maybe I'm going to stay at my day job or take on some other income producing activity as I grow my business. I always remember I taught a course years ago, and there was a young man who booked on the course, and it was a course about being more effective in your business and your work. And he joined the course, and then he called me for our first kind of coaching call, and he said, right, I've quit my job. What do I do next? And I just said to him, see if they'll give you your job back. Because he just sort of wasn't really looking to go into business as an expression of, or an impact that he wanted to make from his soul. He was just looking to do something that let him leave his job. Now, no problem at all if that's you. If you want to leave your job, but don't think that your business is immediately going to fill that gap unless you do the math and you work out that actually it probably will. So that distinction about, well, what do I really need the business to bring in to allow me to live at least the basic life that I want to live, is one of the most valuable calculations you can make. Another thing that's really useful, another number that's really useful to play with, is what's your actual hourly rate? Now, you would calculate this a little bit differently if you're in a service industry where you have literal billable hours, or if you're in a product-based business where it's a little bit more difficult to see exactly which activities contribute directly to the bottom line. But either way, there's going to be a certain number of what we'll call billable hours that you put in. So again, I'm going to use an example of a coaching-based business. And if I'm a coach and I charge clients $500 an hour, which either sounds like a big number or a small number, depending on what you do and where you do it and who you do it with. But let's say I'm going to charge $500 an hour. My hourly rate is $500 an hour. Well, how many clients do you have? 3. Okay, so how many hours do you actually bill for in a month? Well, I do 1 session a month with the clients, so that's $1,500. Oh, okay. So your business income is $1,500. Well, how much time do you put in the business in order to generate that $1,500? How many hours do you spend selling? Well, let's say that in order to get those 3 clients, it takes you 15 calls, 15 hours of calls. Okay, so now we're up to 18 hours to get that $1,500. Then how many hours does it take to just do your admin, do your billing, keep track of things? Let's say you're really efficient. Let's say you can do all of that in just a couple of hours. Okay, so now you've spent 20 hours to get your $1,500. But you also probably need to put in some time to do some promotion and to do some marketing, and you might be spending some time developing social media and developing ideas for new products and researching where you can find clients. And let's say that takes another 10 hours. So you've taken 30 hours to make $1,500. What's your real hourly rate? It's $50 an hour. Now, if you had an ego goal, that's like, oh, only $50 an hour, I have to put up my fees. But if you're not playing that game, it's just a number, and it's a good number to know, because what it lets you know is how valuable your time is, as opposed to other ways that you could be using it. So if an hour of my time is effectively at this point in my business worth $50, and I can get somebody to do some of the work for $25, and I could, with that extra time, do more sales calls and probably bring in a few more clients, that's a really good use of time and resources. But if my hourly rate is $50 an hour, my real hourly rate, and to hire somebody to take over the admin would be $150 an hour. That's a very poor use of my time and resources. So by taking a little bit of time to get to know your numbers, and like I said at the beginning, it's the easiest thing to do, the easiest way to do it is to just make sure you're breathing while you look. And you'll find that the math stays pretty basic and your phone probably has a calculator. You can do some very basic calculations that will give you a really clear sense of how your business is actually doing and where the best use of your time and resources going forward will be. One of the things that is incredibly common when I am working with solopreneurs or soulpreneurs or entrepreneurs in my business is going through with them and looking at whether or not they're actually investing in their business or they're trying to buy solutions to problems. So let's say that you've got a business and you are helping actors get auditions. So you've got some connections in the industry, you have a way of doing it, you're not like an agent that works with a big agency, but you sort of set up as like a manager. And so you're using your connections and you're using your savvy and you're using your drive to help actors get work. Well, you want to grow that business. You want to be able to increase your income, which will allow you to increase your expenses, including the expense known as you. And you want more profit so you can reinvest in the business and so that you can keep your cash flow steady over time. So you're looking at, okay, I want to invest in some software that's going to make it easier for me to track things. Or I want to invest in a coach that's going to help inspire me to be at my best more of the time and grow my business and make more money. Or I want to invest in an assistant, somebody who can freelance and come in and help me with certain tasks. Well, those would all be examples of using money to invest in the growth of your business. By way of contrast, one of the most common things that I see people do is invest money in marketing. Invest money in a service that gets clients for you, that gets customers for you. And they tend to be, in my experience, companies that promise you a lot but guarantee you nothing. Now, they may well have the best intentions in the world, but if you are giving somebody money to do something that you don't want to do and they're not promising you it will get done, that's not really an investment, it's a gamble. And you're not really investing, you're gambling. And gambling is just a really lousy basis. It's a lousy foundation for growing a profitable business over time. Now, one of the most common ones that I see, as I mentioned, is people invest in marketing for their business. Now, if your business is successful at a small level, so you've already proven that it works, and you want to reach more people because you've realized, gosh, for every 100 people that come into my business, we make another $10,000. So I want to get 1,000 more people in my business so I can make $100,000 more dollars. Well, that would be a reasonable investment in marketing. But if you don't have any customers and you're spending money on your marketing, what you're probably really doing is trying to get out of getting better at selling. You're probably trying to shortcut a process and use marketing, which is good marketing is a good way of getting your product or service out in front of the market in order to help you sell. But marketing isn't selling. And you can reach, and some of you may have invested money in getting followers on social media and realized it makes no difference at all to your bottom line. So the rule of thumb is if you want to invest in your business, Make sure it's an actual investment. And if it's an investment you want to make and you feel comfortable with it, go for it. But if you're trying to solve a problem by throwing money at it, or you're just gambling because, I don't know, but maybe somebody else can do this, then chances are you're trying to play pin the tail on the donkey, blindfolded and dizzy. And it's probably not going to work out well. Now, in the next section of the program, we're going to talk about how you can actually fall in love with selling. Because I will tell you, selling is how you produce cash, and cash flow is the lifeblood of your business. And that's pretty much as you need to know to get started. Now, there is so much more that you can learn, and as you go, if you are interested, I encourage you to learn more. We'll talk more about that in creating a lifelong, sustainable, long-term success. But for now, I want you to just get quiet for a minute. And you might want to close your eyes. You don't have to. But I want you to just let all of this settle. And just sit here until you can breathe. And when you're kind of settled and breathing, I'm just going to ask you a really simple question. What would you love to do today to move forward with your business? And whatever your answer is, I encourage you to go do that. Have fun, learn heaps, happy exploring, and I'll see you in the second section of the course.